When we think of success, our minds almost automatically go to one word, big, right? Big companies, big houses, and for a lot of people, big churches. But what if that whole way of thinking is kind of flawed? Today, we're going to dig into what the source material for this explainer calls the fallacy of size.
So let me ask you a question. When you hear the phrase successful church, what's the first image that pops into your head? If you're like most of us, you're probably picturing a megachurch, a giant building, thousands of people, maybe a jumbotron. But is big really the best or even the right way to measure success?
Now, this quote right here, it just throws a wrench into that whole idea. It suggests that while our culture is completely obsessed with big numbers, there might be a much deeper, more authentic way to think about a church's health. So let's explore that.
Okay, let's just dive right in and tackle this idea head-on in our first section, the bigger is better fallacy.
So first things first, what exactly is a fallacy? Well, it's basically a mistaken belief, an idea that feels true, but the logic behind it is, well, it's busted. And the core argument we're looking at is that making church success equal church size is a perfect example of one of these.
I mean, it's a saying we've all heard, right? Anything healthy grows. It sounds so simple, so true. And honestly, this little idea is the foundation that the entire bigger is better mindset is built on.
But here's where the source material drops a bombshell of a question. The point isn't if healthy things grow, it's to what size they're supposed to grow. And that one little question, it changes everything. Suddenly we're not talking about infinite growth. We're talking about the right size.
Think about it like this. A healthy grape is, well, the size of a grape. If you saw a grape that had swelled up to the size of a watermelon, your first thought wouldn't be, wow, that is one healthy grape. It'd be, whoa, something is seriously wrong here. It shows it's not just about growth, it's about the right kind of growth.
Or how about this one? A healthy dachshund is dachshund-sized. An elephant-sized dachshund isn't winning best in show. It's a freak of nature. The point is, everything has an optimal size, a design it was meant to have. Okay, so if size isn't the best way to measure a church's health, what is? In our next section, let's look at a totally different way to think about it. We are redefining church health.
This slide lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you've got the usual scoreboard. How many people showed up? How much money came in? But the source suggests a completely different scoreboard, one that focuses on the results. Are lives being truly transformed? Are disciples actually being made?
And let's be clear about what discipleship really means here. It's not a passive thing, it's an active process. A transformed life isn't just some vague concept. It's about seeing real, tangible change in people. And disciples are people who aren't just growing themselves, they're equipped and actively helping other people grow. It's about reproduction, not just packing a room. And this quote just nails it. You can have a huge crowd, but that doesn't automatically mean you have a community of committed, growing disciples. Those are two very, very different things.
All right, so let's dig into some of the actual data and the historical context that the book presents. This section is called the Bible's Scoreboard. So get ready for this because these numbers might seriously surprise you. A staggering 59%, nearly 2/3 of churchgoers in America are in small churches. We're talking less than 100 people. Add in mid-sized churches and that number skyrockets to 94%. And those mega churches that get all the media attention, they account for just 2% of attendees. Which leads to this really powerful question. If we stick to the logic that bigger is better, does that mean that 93% of pastors in America are failures? I mean, the source argues that's just a ridiculous idea, which means our whole way of measuring success has to be wrong.
The source also points out something fascinating about how they used to keep score. In the Bible, the focus wasn't on how many people crammed into one building. It was on the number of believers across an entire city or region. The goal wasn't to measure the growth of one organization, but the growth of the faith itself.
And all of this leads to a pretty radical idea, which brings us to our next section, small as a strategy.
I love this quote from the source material. We need more bunnies, not elephants. So what on earth does that mean? Well, it's actually a brilliant way to visualize two totally different strategies for growth.
Think about it. Elephants are massive, they're impressive, but man, they reproduce slowly. Bunnies, on the other hand, are small, but they multiply like bunnies.
The elephant model is about accumulating thousands of people in one place, but the bunny model is about creating a whole network of smaller groups that can multiply rapidly, allowing for the kind of deep connection and accountability that actually transforms lives.
And that really gets us to the core of the whole argument, this fundamental shift in thinking from accumulation to multiplication.
It really all boils down to a shift in focus. Are we asking about our seating capacity or our sending capacity? Is the main goal to just expand the building, or is it to expand our reach? In this model, success is measured by how many leaders you train up and send out, not just by how many people you can get to sit in a chair.
And this final quote just wraps it all up so perfectly. A monument is static. It's built to be admired, but a movement is dynamic. It's alive. It spreads. It's always on the go. The argument is the church was always meant to be a movement.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if the biggest, most impactful vision a church could possibly have has absolutely nothing to do with being big at all? What if real success isn't about building one massive thing, but about creating something that multiplies and spreads everywhere? What if the goal isn't to be big, but to be viral?